Welcome, everyone. I'm Karen Lips, president of the Network of Enlightened Women. We work to educate, equip, and empower young women to be principled leaders for a free society. Today, we are joined by Janice Dean. Janice Dean serves as a senior meteorologist for Fox News Channel. In addition, she's the morning meteorologist for Fox and Friends, joining the network in 2004. She's the best-selling author of the Freddie the Frogcaster series of children's books, and most recently is the author of the book, Make Your Own Sunshine. Janice, we are excited to have you with us here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
We are proud to work with young women across the country and encourage them to speak up now, even when it's a little bit uncomfortable. I am so impressed with what you've been doing the last year, speaking up for a lot of people who feel like they don't have a voice in COVID and specifically in New York and what's been happening in the nursing homes in New York. And you've been a great example of someone who's been speaking up. Could you share a little bit about what's going on in New York City and what motivated you to speak up and share your story?
Well, unfortunately, we lost my husband's parents to COVID in separate elder care facilities. At the end of March, we lost his father. And in April, about 2 weeks after that, we lost his mom. It's a long story that starts off with ailing parents. What do we do with our parents who are getting old and can't take care of themselves or each other? And for many years, we were trying to get his parents to move from their 4-story walk up in Brooklyn, which they lived in for 50 years. It was rent controlled. But we knew that once they got older and, had problems like his mom, she couldn't walk, she had back issues. It was very tough for her to get out of the apartment. So for many years, Sean's sister and his brother kept bothering his parents, saying, "Come on, we'll help you. Can we got to get you to a place that has better access." The bottom line is they never moved, and we tried to adapt to that by sending aides in. His dad had dementia, so his health was failing more than his mom's was, but there were still trips to the ER. So we had long discussions with his mother about what to do, and Sean took her around Long Island, which is where we live, and they looked at several assisted living residences that said that they would take both Mickey and Dee. Once Mickey got better, he was in a nursing home rehab center because he had a lot of health issues, and we wanted to get him in better health to join Dee. And then COVID happened. Not long after they were, put into their separate care facilities. We were quarantined. I was home from work in early March. And we couldn't really see them. We certainly couldn't see Mickey. They weren't allowing resident visitors to come in at all. Sean was talking to his mom every day on the phone while she was at her assisted living residence. But in late March, we got a call, not even knowing that Mickey was feeling unwell, saying that he had a fever. And 3 hours later, we get a call saying he had died. We had no idea about the March 25th order, which is something I've been very vocal about. Governor Cuomo putting over 9,000 infected patients into nursing homes. We didn't know about that. We didn't know he had died of COVID until we saw the death certificate. And my husband had to deliver the news to his mom that Mickey had passed away, and her heart was broken, obviously. And she got sick in her separate care facility. Not long after that, she was transported to the hospital. We were worried about her going to the hospital because we thought if she doesn't have COVID, she's probably going to get it in the hospital. They diagnosed her when she got there, and she got sick and died several days after that. So I wasn't going to be vocal, actually, and I'm not a political person at all. People don't know who I voted for. When I got hired at Fox, they never asked me what my party was. I've always said the only red and blue I see on a map are areas of high pressure and low pressure. So
That's a great response.
right, and it's true, but when I wasn't seeing the coverage of that March 25th order that Governor Cuomo had put into effect for 46 days and then eventually reversed the order and scrubbed the whole mandate from their health department website, I thought that it maybe was important for me to tell our story, to raise awareness of what was going on in New York and the fact that this governor was kind of getting a pass. No, he was definitely getting a pass especially on all the national news channels that he was going on and never being asked about the nursing home issue. And then in mid-May, I had read an article from the Daily Caller saying that Cuomo was not counting those that died in the hospital but got COVID in their elder care facility, like my mother-in-law. So I thought, why doesn't her number count? So it was probably, I think, May 22nd, after I saw Governor Cuomo and his brother on CNN joking around about a COVID test, and them joking around about who their favorite son was. And
Those interviews were painful, weren't they? I mean, this was
it,
such a serious time and they were just joking on there. It was not appropriate.
yes, every time I would see that on social media, grief turned to anger. So it was after that infamous Cuomo Brothers comedy hour where they had the big cotton swab and they were joking about the governor's big nose. I thought, I have to, I have to get out there and tell the story. So that's how it started, and I haven't really stopped since then. The good news is that there are several investigations into the nursing home issue in New York. Um, his his administration covered up the numbers. We know that now. They admitted to it. And so I'm hopeful that these investigations are on the side of justice, and that for the over 15,000 elderly that we lost, hopefully their families will get answers. Now more recently, it's been about Me Too, things about the governor and how his treatment of women has been despicable, which I'm not surprised about. Um, so there are multiple things that they could impeach him on. They've actually impeached leaders for much less. And so that's sort of what I'm focused in on, is, putting pressure on lawmakers to continue not only their investigations, but I think there should be an impeachment of this governor.
Well, do we have any sense of why he implemented this nursing home policy? I mean, it just doesn't seem to make any sense for any, I would say, good reason, right? It seems like there's something going on behind the scenes, or something corrupt going on. Do you have any idea of what was going on there?
All of the above. I think it was corrupt. I think it was criminal. I think that he wasn't listening to science. He wasn't listening to his, scientists, his health advisors, who 9 of them, by the way, quit recently. Um, from what I've heard, he was getting information and advice from hospital lobbyists. So, they were kind of telling him, well, we can't take these nursing home residents. We need paying customers. I have no proof of that, but from what I've heard and his relationship with hospital lobbyists, they were the ones that were making the decisions. And it's also very curious that 2 days after he implemented the March 25th order, he gave blanket immunity to all the nursing homes so that no one could sue them. So I definitely think there is something criminal and corrupt. And I actually think that, he should go to jail, if these things are proven.
Well, and it's just been so interesting for me to watch, not as someone not like even living in New York City, that I read about a lot of the challenges and the bad things and the deaths that are happening because of COVID. And then he put out a book on leadership. And it just seemed like there was a disconnect from a governor who really cared about his people, which is what you would want, right? A governor who really cares about their people, trying to figure out what to do, doing their best. And then a governor who seems to be running for president and likes to be doing comedy hours with his brother in CNN. It seems like, he was getting all the attention while there were lots of other governors who maybe were being more steady, not as flashy, and weren't getting the headlines. But it turns out all of his headline chasing, I think, definitely did not lead to good policy, and is a real problem. And do you think he's going to face some consequences for his bad decisions?
I hope so. And I hope that book that he wrote is used against him in a court of law, because a lot of it is lies. The fact, a lot of the information and the numbers that he gave out in the book, how the nursing home issue wasn't that big of a deal because, New York wasn't up there with some of the other states. Well, that's because he didn't count those that died in the hospital. So I think that book should be used against him. And, all of those things sort of also factored into why I was speaking out, is because he was trying to gaslight all of us, and the media was falling for it. They were calling him a possible president. Um, you know, uh, Biden was thinking of him as for a cabinet position. So, and then an Emmy award. I mean, it's really endless, the amount of celebrating that this guy did on national television, while 15,000 families couldn't even bury their loved ones. We couldn't have funerals, we couldn't have wakes. I'm Catholic. We couldn't have last rites. We never saw our in-laws, or my in-laws, before they died. Um, so I hope so. There are several investigations. There's a federal investigation, an FBI investigation, and a Justice Department investigation that started under the Trump administration. And one of the other things that I want an answer to is why the governor didn't use all the federal facilities that were provided to him, like the Comfort Ship and the Javits Center and the other makeshift hospitals that were given to him by the Trump administration, if for overflow patients. Why was he still putting them back where our most vulnerable were living? So, I have to believe that justice will prevail, and that he will hopefully be on a stand someday, needing to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. But the longer that he continues to be a governor, when all of these things are happening at the same time, I mean, he clearly can't govern. He doesn't take any questions from the press at all. All of his events are closed to the press. And every day there's like a new thing. The latest thing is the fact that he gave preferential treatment in March and April to his family and friends to get COVID tests, while nursing homes couldn't even provide COVID tests to incoming patients.
And I was
Really
just reading that before.
disgusting.
Yeah, I just, it's hard to imagine a governor thinking that's okay, right?
Yeah.
And that it wasn't, now a fashion designer. I think one of his fashion friends got it too. And
Kenneth
you're thinking,
Cole.
what?
Kenneth Cole, who is married to his sister. Yeah, Kenneth Cole, the shoe guy.
Yeah, it's just, you think that somebody that feels some responsibility, and you'd hope they'd feel some duty as a governor, um, would not do that. But instead, it seems like he was using maybe all the privileges of the office, to benefit himself and his family, which is so wrong. Um, and it's amazing to me that this nursing home story just didn't seem to get the light of day from media for a long time. And then, as you mentioned, there's now been Me Too allegations against him, and that seems to be getting a little bit of media, but still not as much as I might expect it to. I've been really disappointed, and a lot of politicians on this, and a lot of female politicians on this. Could you talk about what you've seen in terms of leadership from people who we'd expect to be leaders in our society? And have you noticed a maybe a lot of silence from people that you might expect to speak out?
Yes. I've always said, even though I'm not a political person, I think we're not dumb, and realize that if it was Ron DeSantis, who put COVID positive patients into nursing homes, that maybe helped kill over 15,000 seniors. And then there was the constant drip, drip, drip of Me Too allegations against him. I don't think he would be even in power right now. I think they'd already have booted him, and it would have been the top news story, on every channel of every station. I think the Me Too argument is easier for lawmakers to get behind, because I think the other stuff, the nursing home implications, are corrupt and criminal, and they might be implicated in that as well. It's worthwhile to bring up that Governor Cuomo wasn't the only governor that had this mandate in place to put infected patients into nursing homes. Governor Whitmer of Michigan did, Governor Wolf of Pennsylvania, Governor Murphy of New Jersey, and even Governor Newsom out of California for a few days also had the same mandate. So I think they could cast a wider net across other states that did kind of the same thing. And I do want to know what the origins were of that March 25th order, where it came from. Is there an email trail? Are there hospital lobbyists attached to that? But certainly in terms of lawmakers, I'm so disappointed in the Albany lawmakers. You can tell that they have no spine when it comes to this governor. And, particularly with the ones that are in charge of the impeachment process, they are just dragging their heels, and they're stonewalling, and they're saying something like this could take months. And, in June, they're taking the summer off. So when is that ever going to happen? I'm so disappointed in New York lawmakers. It's beyond the pale that they can't. Other leaders have been impeached for much less. There is a laundry list of things that they could get this guy on, and they fail to do so.
Yeah, he seems to be made of Teflon or something. It's unfortunate. Now, one thing I'm amazed at, Janice, is you are a senior meteorologist. You have a wonderful, big platform, and this is very much outside of your lane. I would imagine it'd be much easier to stay in your lane. Could you talk about the courage it took to speak up? How hard it might be? What negative press you faced? I imagine that. The stories I read about Governor Cuomo and how he treats opposition, I imagine you've been the victim of some of that opposition.
Right away, right out of the gate, when I started speaking out in May and June, I got emails and social media. If I put something out on social media, I was attacked constantly, because it was not popular to go against this governor at all. And it's only been recently, since January, when the Attorney General of New York put out her own investigation into the nursing homes, which I'm grateful for. She's a Democrat, and basically was put into power because of Governor Cuomo. And so for her to put out a 76-page document that said basically that they did undercount by at least 60% or 50, and say that the mandate, Governor Cuomo likes to say that mandate had nothing to do with the deaths at all, but she, certainly put in her report that there needs to be more investigating, because it certainly looks like a mandate to put COVID positive patients would have an adverse effect on our most vulnerable. Um, you know, so at the very beginning, I would get emails, especially one email I remember from somebody who knows the Cuomo family very well, who said, I'm sorry for your loss. A champion of causes, obviously, but you need to watch your back with this governor. And I was nervous reading that. I actually forwarded it to one of my bosses and said, just in case something happens. And then, from his administration, there has certainly been pushback when I've written articles or I've done interviews where they ask for a comment from the governors, from the governor and his administration. And, the one thing that got headlines is one of his most prominent spokespeople said, well, she's not an expert on anything except maybe the weather forecast or something like that. And so, they do that so that, to make me feel small and not smart and, not an expert on anything but the weather, but I am an expert on grief, and I am an expert on trying to get answers for my family. So, you know, so yes, but it only made me want to speak louder.
I just can't imagine they would come at you like that. They're saying you're only an expert when you face the worst consequences there are in COVID, with family death. That's so awful to hear. I'd be curious now, what can other people do to be helpful and to shed light on what's going on and to give this story more air?
I think if you live in New York, it's important to, call your representatives, email them, call them on the phone. They get those phone calls, they get those emails. I've been to a lot of rallies. I know it's hard during an age of a pandemic to go to rallies, but they are important as well. Raising your voices with other people, trying to get some press. And luckily that press has come now, that there are more stories out there than ever before about this governor and how he abuses his power. So I'm really lucky that I had this platform. But I will tell you, especially, when we were getting into the Christmas months of December and January, before the Attorney General released her report on Governor Cuomo and nursing homes, I almost gave up. Almost gave up a couple of times, because it was really hard on me, hard on my family. And it is exhausting. And like you mentioned, it's not really my wheelhouse. I don't enjoy this. I don't enjoy being in a political storm. I'd rather forecast the ones that are on a map. But I'm glad that I did it, because I'm hopeful that there will be some accountability, and some of our answers, or some of the questions to our answers might happen.
Well, I think if we do get some accountability, you get a lot of credit for that. You've been an extremely effective leader on this issue. And I'd love to get your advice for young women who are thinking about speaking up now or in the future. How can they be effective leaders?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm in my 50th year right now, and I will tell you, it took a long time for me to have those building blocks to feel confident enough to do something like this. It's a lot, you have to have the support, obviously, of your family that they're okay with this. And even though my husband sometimes is like, how long do you plan on doing this for? It's important to have that support. But if you really feel that you have a voice and you want to stand up for something, sometimes you are alone and you're the only person standing up. But I will tell you that once you do that, you do give courage to others who have maybe gone through something similar or going through something, to also feel like, because that person stood up, maybe I now can have the courage to do that. So I think it's important to have a voice. I think it's important to speak in a chorus, to go to coworkers and tell them of, what you're going through. And if people have similar experiences, because there's always safety in numbers, it's better to speak on, with other people. But I would say that if you feel strongly enough about something, sometimes it only takes one voice. Sometimes it only takes one voice to get the attention, and then others will follow.
And sometimes you just find that moment, right? I mean, I imagine you had no plans in 2018. You didn't think 2020 is the year I'm going to become an advocate on, on a national scene on this. But you, unfortunately, with your story, you became an expert on this. You faced that family death, and then took that and spoke up and didn't just kind of keep quiet on an issue. And I find that so inspiring. And I know there's women and all Americans do across the country. And I think you're not only serving as an inspiration on this issue and your advocacy on it, but also I love that you have written, I think, maybe the perfect pandemic book, and Make Your Own Sunshine. It is a book full of inspirational stories, which is what the world needs right now. I particularly like the one about the father who writes notes on napkins, which is just precious. Could you share a little bit about your book, maybe a couple of the stories that you shared in it?
Well, it's funny because I started writing the book before the pandemic, and I had the idea to write it. I actually have been doing good news stories in my career for many years now. I do a 60-second feature on Fox News Radio called The Dean's List. And it is basically a news story of kindness, or someone that does something for someone else that deserves the attention. So I've done that on Fox Radio for many years now. So this is not a new thing for me, but the book was basically an extension of that. And each chapter is a different story about someone who did something kind for someone else. And, it either grabbed headlines in their community, or someone saw the story and wanted to do something similar for their community. Some of the stories turn into movements. And when I wrote a lot of it during the pandemic, and I was doing a lot of these interviews during a real time of darkness for myself and my family. So when I look back, although I'm so happy that this book is out in the universe, and I really truly believe that people should read these stories, because it will just give you, it'll give you a connection to humanity that maybe you didn't think you had, and that we're all capable of kindness and goodness towards each other. But for me, writing this book brought me sunshine in such a dark time that, the person that probably got the most out of the book was me writing it. So in terms of stories, every chapter has, something special about it. The napkin notes dad is important. Garth, and his daughter Emma, he started writing those notes when she was young. He got diagnosed with cancer and thought that he might not live. So he decided to spend many days and hours writing out napkin notes for Emma, in case he passed away. And he wanted to make sure she still had a note every day to remember him by. He's still here, and he's doing really well. And Emma's in college. So I talked to both of them what that little note meant to her, and for him writing it to her. And I love it as well because I put jokes in my kids' lunchbox every day. So I felt like a kindred spirit there.
Can you
There's
share one of
all,
those jokes with us?
oh, that's a good one. Yeah, jokes. I did some knock knock jokes this morning. Um, yeah, you've put me on the spot here. What dance did the hamburger go to?
I don't know.
The meatball.
Oh.
Silly jokes like that, but they tell their friends, right?
And it makes them
Um,
laugh, right? You give them a smile at school.
that's right. That's right. And then there's a fellow named Seth who several years ago decided on Valentine's Day that he wanted to give a rose to people who maybe didn't have their loved one with them anymore, family members that didn't think that they were going to celebrate Valentine's Day because they didn't have somebody special in their life. And he started this a few years ago where people would nominate people to get a rose from him and some of his buddies who were starting this. They call it Rose Rush program that happens every Valentine's Day. And some of the stories are just, the one gesture of somebody coming to the door and giving someone a rose on Valentine's Day when they never expected it is just, it'll bring a tear to your eye. And the backstory of Seth as to why he decided doing something like this is quite incredible. I think the common thread through all of these stories is everyone that has decided to do something for someone else has gone through a tremendous challenge in their life, that when they come out on the other side of that, they realize that they want to put more goodness into the world, that they survive something, and to pay that forward, they want to spend the rest of their life trying to do beautiful things for other people.
Well, that's such a great story to end on. There really are inspiring stories in there, and you just read it and think, okay, the world's going to be okay.
That's
and during
exactly it.
and during the pandemic, I think we all needed those stories. So thank you so much for joining us today, Janice. Would you like to share your social media with our audience?
Of course, it's at Janice Dean on Twitter. And I promise in between, political stuff with the governor, there's always, a forecast and some cute videos of dogs. So I try to do that. I sprinkle that stuff in there. And then Janice Dean on Facebook and Janice Dean FNC on Instagram. And thank you for having me today.
Great, thank you.